What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. And that has to do with the idea of non-resistance, which is kind of triggering to the old mind because it just constantly wants to battle, and rage against, people, circumstances, events, situations, sometimes God, all of these things that we'd like to control and put into a little box that's just the way we like it, and so the idea of like, what do you mean? So I shouldn't resist when something evil happens to me, or, I shouldn't resist when, whatever excuse this thing can make, it tends to make it, but like, instead of like looking at that, whatever story you're telling yourself about what non-resistance means, try putting this on for now and see how it fits. And that has to do with looking at things that are basically either in thought or in what's going on in your life situations at the moment, because ultimately, if you're not happy now, if you're not feeling good now, that's what we need to work on. And so instead of sitting there and battling against whatever might be troubling you, it's helpful to kind of look at it and instead of trying to fight against it, which ultimately is strengthening that particular problem, so like today, I was like working at like this handyman job, I was like installing a bunch of doors, and like it was kind of stressful, mainly because the doors were really expensive, and me and my guy measured them and kind of took the responsibility of making sure it turned out good. And the front door, which is like the main door that people see, was like half an inch. The depth was too big, so there's like this big gap, and it's like immediately the fear, this is normally what those thoughts of the old man are, that constantly can't like reemerge and resurface in the moment, is like, oh, you're gonna screw this one up, it's gonna look terrible, customer's not gonna be happy, how are you gonna make this right, can you make it right, this door's like, I don't know, $700, and blah, 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 and so instead of sitting there battling with that fear, it's okay to notice that it's there and realize that it's coming from a past assumption where that you're separate from the situation, that has nothing to do with your connectedness with spirit or in any of these things. They're all separate wills going on, but instead of looking at it with this new lens and redefining this, so we're just like, okay, well, now there's an issue. Instead of like reacting out of fear, I'm going to look at it. I'm not going to resist that fear. So yeah, it's there, in the past that would have been a problem, but we're going to move forward and we're going to make this work. And this, it's going to, by choosing to not resist it, but just, it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to, through the doing, we're going to figure this thing out. And so like, me and my guy end up telling him, it's like, well, let's just screw it into the jam. And so we can at least shut the door, and head to lunch and be able to lock it and put like a lock on it. And through doing that, it started coming together more and more so. And, ultimately go to Lowe's and look for something that will fit in that space. Ended up finding some trim piece that ended up working, and let me actually pull it up. I can show you guys. It turned out really nice because we ended up having to paint it and everything. No, I don't know if you can see that. Nice red door. We painted that and installed it. But yeah, and it turned out really nice. It shuts really good, and and I can attribute a lot of that. I was listening to what is his name? Be Something Wonderful. He's on the YouTube. I don't know if he's on any other platforms, but he had been mentioning this idea of like not battling against problems of the old mind. And it really got me thinking, because I was actively doing that, where it's just like resisting things constantly wanting the present moment to be different, and I don't, and by constantly, it's like you drift into it unconsciously when you get back into the old mindset, but then becoming aware of like, oh, I'm sitting here hating the present moment again. I want it to be different. I want it to be a particular way that it's not. Well, instead of sitting there and resisting these things, especially like pain in the body, it's like I was feeling a lot of pain, installing those doors was heavy, and I kind of twisted my knee a little bit weird, and even now I have this sensation, but not to sit there and let's see, how do I wanted to say this? Like, oh, I got to be healed right now, or else I'm going to freak out. And so it's like, yeah, I recognize it's there. I'm not going to be delusional, which is one of the things maybe your old mind accuses yourself of being. It's like, oh, you're just going to embody the state of like the desired already fulfilled, which, as far as I'm concerned, is, embodying the state of like heaven on earth, basically, existing in a state of love and not fear. And then having that reflection start to be your reality as God mirrors that back to you, what you believe your inner identity to be, because ultimately our inner man, or our identity, our inner being, maybe is a less sexually triggering thing, because these labels and these stories associated with them is ultimately an illusion, and so identifying with labels, is one thing, but then start to become mirrored out to you then too. So you can identify with a label of being scarce, being in scarcity, and that will get mirrored to you in your circumstances, your life, your relationships, the not enough time, the not enoughness. Whereas you can also embody the label of abundance, and have that start to become mirrored back to you. And it's the same thing, with pain in the body. As far as I'm concerned, at least, this is what I'm actively testing and trying for myself, and just sharing that with others. Hopefully, hopefully is helpful, at least for someone's mental diet. There's so much going on in regards to health and wellness. It's important to realize that's happening now. It's not tomorrow that you take care of. You're always taking care of yourself, and a big part of that is the stories you're telling yourself about yourself. And it's, oh, I'm always getting sick, I'm always, I have a bad this, I have a this and that, and it's like, okay, well, it's okay to see these things when these thoughts come up that tell you that old story, but instead of just blindly believing these old stories, use that as like data to go, oh wait, that's my subconscious belief that just came right now in this particular moment that says, oh, feel this pain or whatever. Then there's a story associated with the pain of like why it's there, why it exists, and do I want it to stop? I want it to stop doing X, Y, and Z. But as you sit there and focus on what you want it to do, you're also kind of resisting it at the same time. And so realizing that that's a good indication that there's a drifting back into the old man, where the old man feels a bunch of pain and illness and have these weird things that go on. That's okay. It's like, don't resist these things as they come up, but realize that it's the past reemerging again, because everything is coming back to meet us in the present moment always. It's these seeds that we planted, the stories that we told ourselves yesterday, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. Everything has different timing, I guess, and it's in God's timing how these things play out. But like, whatever's really hitting your radar in the present moment is what's really in the forefront of consciousness. And so taking these things as they come now, you're able to kind of level up as you address those particular things that are holding you at a particular frequency. And most of the time it's related to a fear, which you can start to look at differently as just like, I just don't understand something correctly. It's like I have a belief, an assumption, something in my story that I'm telling myself that is not reflective of the truth that God's revealed. In the Bible is where you can kind of see the promises of God and as you kind of believe these things, as you believe that's like true, not only true for the thing of it is, it's like that I've experienced is as you test it, your faith gets stronger and stronger, and that you can see how that kind of starts to play out. And worrying about how it plays out is, I feel like, a stumbling block, where it's just like, every time I've ever kind of thought, oh, it'd be great if this happened, things like played out totally differently, but got the same result that you wanted to get anyway. So I've kind of I wouldn't say rejected, but I just, bringing into the present moment, I don't got to worry about the how. All I have to do is just be, and ultimately just be in a state of love or peace and joy. Anything but fear, which is ultimately identifying with the old identity, which the old identity was tied together inseparably from fear. And so not to say that you're stuck in fear, because like Jesus has freed you, and so part of like your new identity is just embodying that freedom, and then having that mirrored back to you, embodying these states of abundance and having that being mirrored back to you, and when you are basically following this law of assumption, where it's just like about your identity is who you actually are in Christ, who God created you to be, and the more you embody that, the more you see that start to be reflected in your life and in like your situations, circumstances, events. But there's also periods that I've experienced where they feel like loops of suffering, and a lot of that has to do, from my personal experience, is being very resistant to things, like holding on to the things that are actually hurting me, unwilling, unwilling to, not say unwilling, but like but just like not understanding why that is even a bad thing. It's like having vengeance thoughts for some reason. It's like wanting to hurt others. Especially in positions maybe of power. It's like, how dare they do this to everybody, and it's like, I hope they get what wishing death on people, that kind of thing. Where it's just like, well, for one, we're all connected, and basically, as you're seeing things in others, it's being reflective of your identity. Anyway, so if there's something in your identity that you're holding on to that may be too painful to admit, take responsibility and ownership of, you see it, some they doing it instead, and when you like condemn and judge them, you're doing it back to yourself, because they're just showing you an aspect of an identity, a story, assumption, something, a little something that you believe to be real, being mirrored back to you. And so I think it's really important, like moving forward, to being less resistant, but realizing not, you don't got to sit there and be delusional either. It's like you can, example, feel pain, or you could feel maybe some drama, some torment of fear. You can see that it's there, and you can realize that was a past thing. But who are you going to be in relationship to it now? That's the breaking point there, because in the past we'd unconsciously continue to affirm that old identity, that old assumption, that old belief. Where now we can recognize it as like, oh, something that feels negative, that feels draining, because we have an inner guidance system, so it's like the things that feel good, when you're like hearing truths, you could feel it resonate inside of you, and it's like it recharges you on a spiritual level that you can start to feel after a while, and so especially when you become more mindful of that and just don't let it, your attention wander on all these different things. And that's the point of this conversation of non-resistance. You can acknowledge that it's there. You can acknowledge that was something from the past. Now you can choose to embody the new you, the real you, the you in Christ, and then remove your attention from the old state and focus it right back on your desire, which is ultimately to feel and experience and embody states of love, and another way to look at that is, love and God are interchangeable. So what you actually desire are states that are connected with God, which, we're still learning about what these states are, but ultimately creation's finished, and part of like looking towards Jesus is part of like the oneness. So it's like you're already connected in a lot of ways. These higher states, Jesus has already embodied these states. And so like kind of looking for that when you're starting to feel suffering or torment in these states that you're not, it's easier to become more conscious and go, okay, well, that's from the past. Who am I going to be in relationship to it? And realize that creation is finished. God's already created a version of you that's already like that. You just need to embody the state, and it'll reflect back to you as you kind of shift through like the quantum field of infinite possibilities that are already existing states, and so I wanted to bring that to you guys' attention, put it on, test it out. I'm continuing to put that on and test that out, because I can be pretty resistant at times, even at my own detriment. It's just like maybe getting in an argument with like a loved one, and then it's like continuing the argument even after it's said and done, for however long, and just having these vengeance thoughts. And it's like one of the things that's easier for me to do lately is go, I could I could have peace instead. I'm doing this. So does this make sense to do? Really get into a good kind of pattern of like, I don't choose to hurt myself anymore because it's self-inflicted. It's like so much of like the fear we created that. It's like so much of the suffering and torment comes from believing lies, things that are not true, and a lot of times that suffering is associated with that. It's easier to be like, oh, well, that's a past belief and assumption. Yeah, it sucks. I don't want to continue on in that, but I'm going to choose to be this identity instead and embody that state because God's already gave it to you. It's all about just believing that God's already gave it to you. Everything that you already desire, the reason you desire it is because God's already done it, and experienced it. And part of like coming together and this connectedness is, how that kind of intertwines, and that's part of a mystery too, a mystery of how can there be oneness yet relationship. You know what I mean? So it's like how can things be connected like that, but then also everything's totally different. And that's kind of like interesting how that comes together through as you become more mindful of like how this thing is orchestrated. It becomes more awesome. It makes you appreciate more and more things now. Not oh, it's coming in the future, some utopia in the future. It's like you embody you be the utopia. And that's what you will start to see mirrored back. So you start waving at people, strangers will start waving back at you that you've never even seen before, just driving by. You test it for yourself. I encourage you to test it because as you test it, you'll see it. You'll see that this is real, with your own eyes. And you might have some resistance from the old mind about like, this is crazy, this is delusional, this is psychotic, whatever label you want to whatever the old mind wants to put on it. And it's like, just use that as more data. It's like, yeah, that was what I would think in the past, but that's not who I am anymore, and then be what what you're desiring to be, which is ultimately at peace, joy, all the fruits of the spirit expressed. And it's like the stuff that, it's like resistance where you're resisting. Well, you're also strengthening. And what you're strengthening is fear and suffering. So it's like, look at it. Yeah, it's there, but that's not what I'm going to be putting my attention on anymore. I'm going to put my attention back on embodying this identity, and we're always doing this. This isn't something new. It's something that we've unconsciously been doing our entire lives. And so it's like you can either start to take control of what you've already been doing and experiencing. And so much of like the old mind is like the older you get, like the more you're stuck in fear and suffering identity, the more you strengthen that, the older you get. So this is like a slow decline into hell, more and more so, and so much of it is just snapping out of this mental chatter, this automaton kind of like NPC, always just chasing the outer, for everything that was already inner. And that's part of the trick. And I wouldn't even say it's like a trick. It's just part of like not understanding. Where it's just like you seek the kingdom of God first, which is within you. And and then I feel like personally, as you kind of connect with that, that starts to become mirrored more and more. And not to say that there isn't like difficult people and shit that fucking like get in your business every once in a while, but look for the story, especially if like somebody's triggering you, just by their presence, just by the vibe they give off. I get that sometimes with like first impressions from people. It's like a lot of times I'll have like a negative first impression of people. I don't know why, but I've been actively trying not to do that, just because it's like I don't, it's like, oh, I just met you, and it's like, oh, okay, a lot of it has to, because I don't really want or need a lot of things from people, so it's just like, yeah, it's cool, but that's shit I'm working on. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, including me. And it's just like not to sit here on like a pedestal, like, oh, everything's just so fucking amazing to all the time. It's like it's getting better and better though, catching it faster and faster. What would be, something I would resist for months on end. Might be something maybe for 15 minutes or a day. Try to follow the advice in the Bible of like don't let the sun go down on your anger. So whatever might have been and then Jesus was saying too about how don't worry about tomorrow, let sufficient for the day, worry about today basically, and in the whatever happens today, try to resolve it that same day. It's really helpful when you start to really get into that, like I'm just what's that, carpe diem, seize the day, live that groundhog day. But like that, try to live your best day every single day. So it's like, well, if I was triggered 99% of the day, okay, that's just where I'm at. Not to sit there and shame and judge yourself, which is what the old man loves to do, is just shame and guilt and judge and condemn itself. And yeah, and then you'll spend, then as you do that, then that gets mirrored out, and then it just starts to just snowball and just get in these loops. But then, but catch it faster and faster. It's just like, and it actually becomes enjoyable because like the alternative is you're going to spin out just suffering instead. So it's like, okay, well, I know it's very resistant to want to actually do this, even though what you're resisting is love and joy and peace. See the insanity of it, but like, yeah, but I think I'm going to bounce. I got to take care of the chickens here. I got, they've been laying, I think 9-10 eggs a day, which is pretty, we're getting a lot of these eggs, so we're going to start selling some of these eggs, I guess, so that, it'll pay for the food, and so they'll kind of pay for themselves, which would be nice. I got a couple of weeks until Thanksgiving, and the turkey's going to, we're going to become one with the turkey, and like, what's going on, Emma? But like, other than now, business is going good, it's just like working on that checklist, making good progress on it, starting to, the weather's starting to change, and so we got a couple more days that can still paint and stuff outside, for sure. Who knows if 2 weeks from now it'll warm back up. I'm not really too anxious about the weather. I used to be really anxious about winter. A lot of it had to do with scarcity beliefs, when it came to like my electric bill, because my house, the furnace and everything. But over the years I've gotten better and better of just not resisting that either, accepting that everything's in God's control and everything's being a blessing. A lot of the stuff that the new stories, the new identity kind of to connect with is that, God's in control. Everything's happening for my benefit, for this awakening, for love ultimately. And not to sit here and freak out and get worried that I'm alone and separate. And, a lot of times you can even start to freak out about your own thoughts, being so powerful that, it's just you're going to create a big hell and not mean to. And, you're going to wish sickness and death on people that you love, and just because you had an errant thought. That's another one where you can catch it, and it's like, oh well, that, and it's like, oh shit, that wasn't me, and then you start resisting it and just go, hey, instead of that, I desire that everybody I know is healthy. It's like that's not who I am. That I just wanted the person to fuck off and whatever. It's like, yeah, I had the thought, but like, I'm not going to resist it. I'm just going to choose a different thought. It's like, I don't actually even want that to happen. Start focusing on what you do want to happen. You'd be amazed. Most of it is, I just want more love, and so, yeah, with that being said, I think I'm going to bounce, thanks everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. Until the next now, God bless.